and probably one of the most important tasks during setup, is establishing a chart of accounts that makes sense for your industry. The reason for this is the chart of accounts is what's going to produce on all your financial statements, and it's what's going to allow you to analyze your profitability in the way that you're most comfortable with and what's most important to you. There are several options when it comes to chart of accounts, and if you have, when you're in the setup, QuickBooks will ask you several questions, and they'll ask you to pick certain industries. And if one of those that are exactly what your industry is, the chart of accounts that they'll put in as a default may be a good starting point. It may be actually everything that you need. But in most cases, what QuickBooks is going to ask you questions with may not exactly be your industry. And in the case of the collision repair, we often highly suggest that you just go through and say no industry and get no chart of accounts actually pre-set up. Now, unfortunately, QuickBooks will set up certain accounts automatically. And a lot of those accounts will just inactivate because they still won't be as detailed enough as what you're going to need. But there will be a structure there. To get to the chart of accounts of your company file, you can either go to Lists and choose Chart of Accounts, but as you will note, there is a Control A, and it's one of the key shortcut keys that I recommend that you remember, because anywhere in the program you can hit Control A and your chart of accounts will appear. Now, one thing you may notice is that they have a number of numbers or account numbers. I highly recommend also that you follow the GAAP, or the Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, when it comes to how do you structure your chart of accounts. In the GAAP principles, the 1,000 accounts are all assets, and one of the primary assets that you have is your bank account or your cash. Then 2,000 accounts are your liability accounts. You have your 3,000 accounts, which are your equity accounts, and depending on what your structure, if you're a corporation or whether you're a partnership or you're a sole proprietorship, these will vary somewhat. Then your 4,000 accounts will be all your income accounts, your different types of income. And in this case, you can see there's a breakout of various types of income for the collision repair industry. Then your 5,000 accounts are your cost of goods sold, which will mirror what your income accounts are, except for it's got a 5 instead of a 4 in front of it. And then your 6,000 accounts start out with your normal expense accounts, and you have various areas that you put together that have, in many cases, in many industries, have KPIs that you can look at to see whether or not your expenses are out of normal from normal businesses of your same type or not. And then you get down through your wages. And then once you're done with your actual 6,000 accounts, there are some other accounts that are used, and that would be your other income accounts. And other income is, in essence, any type of money that comes in that is really not directly related to what you actually do. So in the collision repair industry, it would be that what you're not actually fixing cars, but it's money that comes in that's not related directly to actually fixing the car. And then you also have a set of 8,000 accounts, which are other types of financial expenses, which typically are not directly related to fixing the car as well. And in this case, we have several of them set up. So what I want to do here is I want to show you how you set up a new bank account. Now, this bank account, as you'll notice here, are the bank accounts that are listed. We have the 1,000 account, which is Chase Bank. Then we have 3 sub-accounts, and you can tell them because they're indented, because in a hierarchy view, they will show whether they're indented or not. And what this means is that you don't actually ever use the 1,000 account to post any transactions to. It is what we call a parent account or a totaling account. And what that does is it gives you the total of every other account that's below it. And the general operating fund plus the reserves plus the payroll account all add up to the total that's listed there. Now, to keep in mind, they are all still under the same bank account. And what the purpose of these funds are is if you need to help move or transfer money into one account so that you don't intermingle funds, this is a really good idea. You'll notice that the savings reserve account, the 1040 account, is not directly as a indented sub-account of Chase Bank because it's actually a separate account number. Petty cash, which keeps a good track of your petty cash in-house, is a separate. And then we have the 1095 bartering or contra accounts. Now these are an important addition that we have added for our clients, that anytime that you have a business-to-business swap out or trade of work, this is a very good way to keep track of that. And in this case, we've got a 1095.05, which is GM Electric, that we're doing some work for their vehicles, and they are going to do some work for us, and we're going to swap it out. And then you have the KT Landscaping, which is the same situation. But then I want you to focus on the 1099 account, which is for adjustments. That's a very important account that we will get into during the processing, especially in the advanced processing. It is a good account that keeps everything transparent, and you can see what's taken place, and therefore, then if you ever get it audited or you ever get questioned, you have that information right there readily available. So to add a new account, again, you can always go down to the account at the bottom and say New, but again, it's got a Control N. And in fact, in any list or the list screen, if you hit Control N, it will open up the new or the Add New box for that particular list. So in this case, we're going to add a bank account. So we're going to hit Control New or Control N, and you'll notice that there's a list of different types of accounts that you can add. And these are the basic ones that are most commonly used, but there's actually a whole host of others that we often add as well. And these are going to be listed in the drop down, and we can choose those as well. So in this case, we're going to choose bank account. And when we hit continue, the first thing it's going to ask for is an account number. Now the account number we're going to select is a 1020 account, but I want to first of all show you what happens if we actually try to add a similar or the same account number with a different name. And we're going to call this tax reserves. So we're going to use this to transfer money each week or whenever appropriate, so that we'll have the money in there available when we're ready to pay taxes. Now we hit a sub account because we're going to put it underneath the Chase account because it's still going to be part of that Chase bank, but we're just going to separate the funds. Now when we try to save this, it's going to recognize that there's already a 1010 account and it's got a different name, so you're going to have to change this. So we hit OK, and we're going to change this 1010 to 1020. Now, it's going to pop up a message immediately about setting this up as a bank feed. And we are going to set, and we're going to highly recommend that you set your banks and your credit cards all up on bank feeds, but not at this point. This process is not very user-friendly when you follow it according to QuickBooks, and there's a much easier way to do it. And you end up having to do almost the same things over again if you do it this way. So go ahead and just say no in this case. And so now we have our tax reserve fund set up as well. Now any of the balance sheet accounts that are in here all have check registers with them. In other words, we can double click the actual account and it's going to pull up like looks like a check register. Now your other accounts like expenses and things of that nature and income, they're not going to have these registers like this. We highly recommend that you do invest a good amount of time to ensure that your chart of accounts is set up correctly, because this is the foundation of QuickBooks. And if you don't have this set up correctly, when it comes to the end, when you're wanting to try to look at your finances, you're going to say, why doesn't this look right?